everybody. Today is Wednesday, January 28th, and we are headed out to Lake Austin this morning. It should be a beautiful day out there. Weather forecast is for sun, and it should be about upper 70s or so. It's going to be a little chilly starting off this morning, the lower 50s. I might be a little underprepared for that. I'm just hoping as soon as that sun comes out, it warms up quick. But anyways, the bite's been extremely tough out there lately. Most guys are having a hard time even getting a bite out there. So I've kind of been on a deal lately with the jerkbait where I can catch a small limit, but it's pretty tough out there. You really got to grind it out. So the goal today is to catch a limit. We'll see what happens. The big fish out there have been MIA for a couple months now, so I don't know. Hopefully we luck out and they show up on camera today. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully this video will help you all kind of figure out how to catch some fish out there right now.
Huge. Gotta be a catfish. Looks like a flathead. girl. That's 5, baby.
Alright everybody, as you can tell, I'm back home now. Ended up getting off the water shortly after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Ended up timing it actually pretty well because right after I caught that 5th fish, the battery in my camera went out. My last battery worked out pretty well. Did just end with the 5 fish. I lost one, nice one, about 3 or 4 pounds. That would have been my biggest fish of the day. But anyways, it's time for the wrap up of the day. Kind of go over some of the keys to success for today as well. The conditions we were facing today, it was nice and sunny. Temperatures ended up reaching the high 70s. So it was nice and warm all day. The first half of the day was pretty calm, not a whole lot of wind, but the last half of the day that wind really started picking up. Some pretty high water. The water was really high, but the water was still pretty clear, so it made for a pretty good jerkbait bite. So what were our keys for success today? Well, most of my fish today were caught in pretty shallow water. I caught one in a little bit deeper water, out in about 8 to 10 foot, but everything else I caught, or bites that I had, were in 3 feet of water or less. I even caught one fish probably just like 1.5 foot of water, so they were all pretty shallow today. Why was that? I'd say it was probably because of 2 things. One, the sun that we had, the nice warm temperatures that got that super shallow water warming up pretty quick. But 2 was the fact that we had these flooding conditions. The water was really high. Anytime on Lake Austin that water comes up, those fish are going to move to the bank. Almost every time. It doesn't always happen, but almost every time. So anytime you show up at the ramp and that water is nice and high, do not rule out that shallow water. Always go check it out. You know, like I said, it doesn't always happen, but most of the time it does. They look for every excuse that they can to get shallow, and rising water is definitely one of those excuses for them to get shallow. So now with that sun that came out today and that nice warm weather, one of the big keys that I found later on in the day in catching these fish up shallow was you had to get out of the wind. Like I said, the wind started you know, really blowing the last half of the day. I tried fishing quite a bit of shallow rock, you know, that was in the sun, but it was really windy in those sections. It wasn't until I found a section that had some nice shallow rock that was out of the wind, as well as it was positioned where the sun had been shining on it from the moment that sun came up over the horizon. So it had been soaking up some nice sun all day long. It was protected from the wind, and that's where I got the most bites and started. Yeah, I think I caught. Well, I caught my last 2 fish there. Lost that 3 or 4 pound bite there. So that was pretty key. It was getting out of the wind, these little protected areas that were directly in the sun with rock that was soaking in that heat. Let's talk a little bit about the equipment that I used today. First of all, the biggest thing, the baits. The biggest thing, the number 1 jerkbait that I've been catching them on lately, I've got right here. This is called the River to Sea Suspend Min 88. This is a suspending jerkbait. As you can tell, it's not real big, but it's still got this nice big lip on it right here, so that helps it get down a little bit deeper. Most of the jerkbait fish that I've been catching weren't as shallow as they were today. I've had to go a little deeper, you know, some of that deeper rock to try and get them. And this is what I've had to use to get them there, because most deep diving jerkbaits that you'll find are much bigger baits. Usually they're about this long as opposed to this. It's kind of hard to find a deeper diving jerkbait that's still got that small profile. So this has been the biggest key to my success for the last month or so now on Lake Austin, is this bait right here. But today, with them being up shallow, you know, I caught my first fish on this, but once I started fishing shallow, I switched over to a different jerkbait that would do a little bit better in that shallow water. This is the one that I put on. Honestly, I have no idea who makes this bait. I'm actually pretty darn sure that I pulled it out of the dollar bin at Walmart. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull baits out of the dollar bin at Walmart that are kind of funky colors and stuff, and I'll sand them down and repaint them to my own liking and whatnot, and then, you know, change out the hooks and maybe modify a couple other things about the bait. So this is a jerkbait that I just bought out of the the dollar bin at Walmart. It's actually a floating jerkbait, but as you can see, it's got this short little lip on it. But what I did, if you look at the bottom here, is I added a bunch of storm suspend dots to it to weight it in order to get it to suspend. And so I spent a lot of time dunking it in some water and trying to get it to suspend just right. I also swapped out the hooks, repainted it to a little custom color job that I like to use a lot. It's a color that's been really successful for me. It's basically just like a dark purple back, kind of a yellowish side and a white belly. Just meant to kind of mimic a gizzard shad. So anyways, this bait, you know, it'll only dive a couple of feet, but it'll suspend, you know, down at that, you know, 1, 2, maybe 3 feet down. So this is this is the bait I switched to once I started fishing shallow, and this is what I caught most of my fish on. As far as the other equipment goes, we're throwing an Ardent Apex tournament reel. This is an awesome, these Apex series reel, any of them are great, whether it's the tournament, the pro, or the elite. They're all fantastic reels, helps me cast these jerkbaits a mile. That was the other thing that was really key today, was being able to make really long casts with that jerkbait. Since the fish have been so deep now for so long on Lake Austin, and those fish that I caught shallow today they seemed like they were fish that had probably just moved up into this shallow water from the deep stuff. And when they do that, and you've got, you know, kind of the clear water conditions that we've got right now on Lake Austin, those fish are very skittish, and so they get really boat shy, really timid. And so you have to be able to make those long casts out in front of the boat in order to, before you get too close to them and spook them. So that was very important today. So that's where my Ardent reel came into play. But I was also throwing this on the Ardent Denny Brower Signature Series rod. This is their top water bait rod, actually. I've kind of gotten to where I prefer throwing a jerkbait on their top water rod. I was throwing them on their crankbait rod. But I felt like the crankbait rod was just a little bit too stiff for these jerkbaits. But the top water rod, it's got a much softer tip, does a lot better with these jerkbaits. So that's what I was throwing that on. As far as line goes, I've been throwing the Suspend Min on actually monofilament fishing line, on 14-pound test monofilament fishing line. Now there's a reason for that. Typically I don't like throwing monofilament with a whole lot of stuff, but this bait actually sinks very slowly. It doesn't suspend perfectly, but it sinks very slowly, and in order to kind of counterbalance that, I throw it on monofilament line because monofilament line floats. And so the monofilament, between the monofilament line floating and this sinking very slowly, it counterbalances it, so then this bait suspends almost perfectly with that monofilament line. So that's why I threw this one on monofilament line. Now the other bait that I was using, this shallower jerkbait, I was actually throwing on 12-pound test P-line Halo fluorocarbon because I have this bait tweaked to where it suspends pretty much perfectly. So I didn't really need to throw it on that monofilament to try and get that bait lifted up a little bit. So again, some of our keys for success today: jerkbaits, shallow rock, in the sun, and out of the wind. That was the key today. But again, that was due to the conditions. I would suspect that if the weather gets nasty, those fish will back off a little bit again, and I'll have to switch back over to that River to Sea Suspend Min and catch them on a little bit deeper rock. So anyways, that's how my day went. Hopefully these tips will help you all catch a few more fish out there. Now remember guys, anytime you're out there on the water, you're only one cast away from making your day.